We will start talking about one of the hottest topics in early childhood. And I'm interested in hearing opinions from people in different locations. So far, we have one person from the UK. Usually our broadcasts reach all around the world, and I'm sure they will. Hi, Marcia. We have people from all around the world joining us, and I'd like to hear what their take on this whole controversy is, and if this controversy exists in other parts of the world. But right now in America, it's a hot topic, as are many things in America always. But I do think it's an important topic for us to talk about, because it's one of those topics that's really divided the early childhood profession right down the middle and kind of caused a battle to go on. So I do want to go there tonight with that topic. So let me give you a little backstory with me and technology. So I taught public school for many years, right? 20 years in the public school system. And one of the benefits that I felt that I had was that I worked primarily in a district that was embraced technology and won lots of awards for their early adoption of technology and the amount of technology they supplied to teachers. And to me, that was a great bonus, because I enjoyed it. Okay, so that was great, and there was just technology flooding into my classroom all the time. Starting in 1999, I can remember getting my first computer in my classroom, and we thought that was just like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then it just kept coming, and I had interactive whiteboards and projectors and iPods and anything that you can think of, we had as far as cutting edge technology went in the classroom. So when I left the classroom to start consulting full time and doing this, I volunteered on my local AEYC, and that's our early childhood organization here in the US. And I volunteered to be on their board. And the first thing I noticed, having come from public school, and the board members were all from the private sector, was they had the exact opposite feeling about technology that I did. So it was very eye-opening to me that they didn't like technology and they didn't embrace technology like I had. And their views on technology were very, very negative. And so it really got me thinking, because I'd always just been an early adopter and an embracer of technology. So let me know your thoughts in the comments as well about technology in the classroom or in your home. I'd love to hear those. So I was introduced to this battle about 5 years ago, because I had always been in a forward-thinking technology school district with lots of tools at my fingertips that I could use. And one of the things that I did with all those tools was I tried to find ways to make them appropriate for the kids in my classroom. And I'm sure that's what lots of teachers all around the world do. But my friends on the AEYC board didn't see it that way. They saw all technology as being the same, right? So they painted all technology with the same brush and the same color of paint, and it was all evil. And I never saw technology that way. I never labeled all technology in that way. I always saw it as a way to enhance learning, to enhance the high quality instruction that I was already providing the children. It was a way to go deeper into the topic and take kids further in their learning. It was never a babysitter or a replacement. And so our attitudes about technology were very, very, very different. And I tried really hard to, and we might need to refresh our browser. I see that my connection is weak right now, so refresh your browser. Sorry about that. I agree with Gail, I do, but because I've worked on both sides of the playing field, I can play devil's advocate too. So I want to make some points about technology, and make sure that you share this out if you know of any teachers or parents who might be interested in this topic and talking about it with us. Technology is not going away. I think that's one thing that we can all agree on, right? Both sides of this debate can agree that technology isn't going away, right? We see new technology every single day. Technology is not going to go anywhere. So putting our head in the sand like an ostrich and ignoring it and completely eliminating it from any of our educational programs would be silly. Really, it would be fighting a losing battle. You can do that all you want, but it's not going to work in the long run, because we are preparing kids for eventually the eventuality of working in a society where they will be expected to know how to use these tools. And so a lot of people on the other side of the fence say, well, they can learn that at home. Well, what they learn at home on technology is completely different than what we do in the classroom with them. Those are two completely different things. It's like saying we're not going to teach kids to read because reading is evil. We'll let the parents do that at home. So that's not quite the same thing. Deborah says she has iPads in the classroom. I think they're awesome. There has to be a balance. We live in the 21st century. I so agree with that. I didn't see who wrote that, but I agree. Robin, there we go. Okay, so that was my first point. Technology is not going away, and the ostrich approach isn't going to work anymore. Okay, and a lot of times that ostrich approach comes from our fear of the unknown. If we're not familiar with technology or comfortable with it, so a lot of people that have that mindset are often fearful of the unknown. And often the training isn't there. So a lot of teachers out there want to learn how to adopt technology and how to use it appropriately, but they don't have the resources to do that. The other thing I want to make, the other point I want to make about technology is that it changes every single day. So technology today is not the same as what technology will be tomorrow. I mean, it's just a broad general term to define an electronic device that does something, right? Technology changes every single day. And we can't paint it all with the same brush and the same paint. It's all very, very different, right? So it changes every day, and it's all very different. So think about it this way. We have social media. That's kind of a technology thing because you need a device to access that. So that's technology. And then we have iPads. Those are a device where you can also access other things. We have all kinds of technology. So it changes every single day. And because it changes, our thinking on it needs to evolve as well. So when technology was first introduced into classrooms, one of the first responses I had way back when in the early 2000s, like when we first got some of our student technology, was that this is taking up room in my classroom. It was my LCD projector in my document camera, and I was like, this takes up too much room in my classroom. I don't have enough room for all these kids. They need to be playing, and I don't have room for it. And so that was my first initial response to technology in the classroom. And Eileen, I'm going to get to that because that's a good topic, good talking point. We're going to get to that in a minute. So I saw it as taking up space, and then so a lot of teachers started putting their projectors and their document cameras in the hallway, and that was not going to fly because they all cost a lot of money. And they could be seen from the windows, and they were going to get stolen and all that. So the principal made a mandate that you have to have it in your room. You can't stick it in the hallway or a closet. Have to have it in your room. Taxpayers paid for it. You should be using it. But the other problem was we didn't have training. Like, we had training in how to turn it on, how to blow the dust out of the LCD projector. But we had no training in how to use it with little kids. And part of the reason was not because our district didn't want to give that to us. It was because nobody had used this with little kids before, especially kids as young as 4. We were like the pioneers, and so we had to find ways to appropriately use it to enhance and not replace and not babysit. And so that's kind of what we set out to do, and that's how I kind of shape my views on technology. So I do believe it can be used as a tool to support and enhance instruction, but never replace. And a lot of people say, well, I love technology because my kids love technology. And that's a dangerous view to take, in my opinion, because kids like candy too, right? If they had their way, they'd have it for all 3 meals, right? Just because they like it doesn't mean that they know what's best. And it's just, candy is just like everything else, just like in technology. It's in moderation. So we have to have things in moderation because kids will overindulge. You ever had a kid who went to the state fair and overindulged and threw up on one of the rides? It's the same thing, right? Okay, so let's talk about a few of the facts, and then I'm going to talk about those minutes because that's where a lot of the controversy comes into play. So here's some of the latest information when it comes to the minutes. I know a lot of us in the early childhood field, in the classroom setting, have been told about the number of minutes that we can and can't have our kids using technology. And I have a big problem with these numbers because these numbers paint all technology with the same brush, all the same with the same color. They don't differentiate in the type of use. And so I'll get to that in a minute. But the first point I want to make, the first fact, is that for 15 years, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I'm in America, so I'm going to cite those sources that I have, they've advised parents to avoid screen time completely for children under the age of 2. And so that was what I was going out there during the past 5 years when I've been consulting full time and giving workshops that I've been telling teachers what the American Academy of Pediatrics says. Because that's my job, is to present factual information that's research-based. But in the back of my mind, I always thought this. And so when this new information came out, I thought, yes, thank you, someone's listening to me. By the time they published this information, when this information was published about no screen time for children under the age of 2, when that information came out, it was already outdated because we know that technology changes every single day. And for the academic world to do research takes years. So a lot of times we're putting out position statements and things on certain topics that haven't been researched enough, and there's not enough research out there to really say. So that was what they said for 15 years, okay? But last year, there's going to be a new release. And the reason I'm doing this topic today is because very soon, fall of 2016, the American Academy of Pediatrics will release their new recommendations for screen time. And then that will be the standard that we follow here in the States. And of course, then once they've released that, it's going to take the childcare in the education field 5 years to catch up to that. And it's going to be a constant game of catch up. So that was what was frustrating to me, because by the time this stuff is published and then by the time everyone else catches up, then it's outdated. And so it bothered me that I was giving outdated information to people, but it's all the information that I had. So one of the things they said, the American Academy of Pediatrics said, in a world where screen time is no longer screen time, it's just time. I liked that quote. Our policies and our thinking, they need to evolve, or they will become obsolete. So all the people that are on this side and all the people that are on this extreme side, we need to be. It's not you or they, it's us, it's we. We need to be changing our thinking all the time because technology evolves daily. Hey, Kelsey and Kaylee, welcome. I'm going to get there. Yes, I am. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned is that these new guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics should be out very soon. They said fall of 2016, let's hope. But the other thing I wanted to address was those minutes, right? That's the real debate in early childhood, is the minutes, the number of minutes that kids should or shouldn't be on a device that have been adopted over the last few years. So all these childcare licensing agencies out there have these strict regulations about the number of minutes that kids can be on a screen. And it really bothers me because they're making these general, broad, sweeping statements without taking into consideration the type of technology. So here are some facts about that. Consumption. So there's different types of ways to use technology. And the way that a lot of us think about technology and little kids is we think about consumption. And consumption means basically this. The kid is sitting in front of a screen doing this, staring, right? Watching something play. There's no interaction. I call it the TV look. Some of my kids would have that on the first day of school. I could tell if they'd ever been in school before and if they'd ever had interactions with an adult, because they would do that when I started talking. Because they considered me a screen. That was their screen face. So that's consumptive use. So when a parent gives a child an iPad or a phone in a shopping cart or to watch in the car, that's consumptive use, okay? And so when they're giving us those minutes as guidelines, they're talking about consumptive use, in my opinion. Now, that's not written anywhere because most of the agencies that make these regulations don't even know what consumptive use is. But consumptive use is staring at a screen and just watching a movie play or something. That's consumptive use. The next level of use is creative or productive use, okay? So when children are actively involved in creating or producing a product, and that product could be a video, it could be a puppet show. I'm not going to talk about apps during this broadcast. I don't like to talk about apps. I did like 5 years ago, but it got to be too much. I get overwhelmed with emails every day from app developers begging me to talk about their apps. And if I did talk about an app, then they would bombard me, and I just don't do it anymore. Because technology evolves, I don't want to mention any particular apps that will be obsolete in a year. So I'm not going to talk about apps. If you want to talk about them in the comments, you're more than welcome to do so. So we've got strict consumptive use. Then we've got the productive and the consumptive use. The productive and the creative use, where they are creating something. They are actually making something. And that's where a lot of us, if you have your own children or grandkids, they often can do things on their device, their phone, their tablet, computer, whatever, that we could never figure out because they're digital natives. And this technology was invented before they were born. So they've been using it since the time they were born. So it's very second nature to them. They can figure things out. They know how to do these things. So they are producing and creating something, whether that's a video or they're actually making something to communicate with others. And then the last definition is communicating. Are they communicating verbally? So are they creating a video? Are they Skyping with grandma? Are they Skyping with other kids in other countries? Are they communicating? Are they using this technology to communicate, whether that's in a chat forum for older kids, of course, or whether that's in a video format, or whether that's by creating something in an app to make a puppet show or a video of their own or whatever? Are they communicating in some way and using language and interacting? So that's consumptive use, the production and creation of something, and communicating. So those minutes, going back to those minutes that drive me nuts, those minutes are only talking about consumptive use. And so that's when it becomes dangerous, when kids are consuming technology, just sitting there and staring at it. But when they're actually creating, producing, and communicating, they're working at a much higher level. So they're using a lot more of their brain. Let's see. I'm just going to catch up on the comments. Hi, Faye from London. We're talking about a hot topic tonight. Yes, that's right. Teachers and parents need to use the screen in a beneficial way, and the minutes need to go out the window. I agree, because let's say you have a 10-minute limit in your classroom. That's not something you impose, but something that the state or child care licensing has imposed on you because they don't know what they're talking about. But you're creating something with your kids. You're making a video. Like I've done videos where kids are introducing themselves at the beginning of the year with sock puppets. I mean, that's creation and communication. I mean, that's good stuff. So I don't think that should be part of the 10 minutes. So Jennifer has a good question. She's a mom and she wants to know, how long should she give her son? Well, for passive consumptive use, where they're just staring at a screen, you do want to limit that. That should be a very small amount. And when they talk about screen time, it's not just on a device like an iPad or a phone. We're talking consumptive use of television as well. So you have to think of that consumptive use as all inclusive of staring at any screen, whether that's a television. Television is technology, whether that's an iPad or a cell phone of some sort. That's consumptive use. So you're going to want to limit that consumptive use and look at those guidelines for screen time. But when it comes to the production, the creation, and the communication, now they're now saying that up to an hour is okay. Now they haven't come out with that yet, but that is coming. There we go. All right. So I talked about how there's a big difference between Skyping and between staring at an episode of whatever the latest cartoon is, annoying cartoon. So I remember back 5 years ago when I started talking about technology and the use of devices in the classroom, and it was a really hot topic because people were just starting to adopt these things in the classroom, and not a lot had been done at the pre-K and kindergarten or early childhood level as far as technology adoption. And when I would tell people about this, the American Academy of Pediatrics statement on under 2, it would frustrate some of the people that I was working with, some of the teachers I was talking to, because they had children under the age of 2, and it made them feel like bad parents if their kids were looking at a device ever, because at the time they said never to have your kid look at a device. And one thing we don't need more of here in the States or anywhere in the world is parent shaming. We don't need any more of that. So I had people that were feeling frustrated, and they're like, I know it's bad for my kids. I know the doctors say it's bad for my kids, but I don't know how to keep a device out of my child's hands. So it's 2016, almost 2017. And so it's almost impossible to do that now. So we want to stop the parent shaming and know that there are different types of uses. I have a friend, Kathy Griffin from Kathy Griffin's Teaching Strategies, and her grandkids FaceTime her all the time, and they are learning how to communicate with her through text. I mean, and through Siri, they can talk into the device. So that's creation. You know, they send her pictures, and we'll come right back. Sorry about that. So I'm just checking over my notes before I go on. Oh, here's another thing that they talk about, is, I get this question all the time. Yes. Kara, I can't read all of your comment, but it looks amazing. I'm going to come back to that one. Gail, I love that. Gail says the idea of minutes on technology is like putting minutes on art, playground, and music. Yes, and Megan has a great point too. And that's actually what I was going to talk about next. People ask me all the time, so is an iPad, if I want to read a book to my kid on the iPad, is it evil? Basically, they want to know if they're a good parent. And there's a huge debate about that, right? There's people that would never use a Kindle and would never read a book on a device. I like that kind of thing because I don't like to carry books around and I travel a lot, but because they've grown up with books, it's familiar to them, and there's often a fear of the unknown. So here's what the research says about reading a book to a child on a tablet or a device. And this is the way I've always felt, but I love it when researchers say the exact same thing that I've felt and known all along. It just validates me and I feel awesome. The value of reading to a child isn't anything magical about the book, right? And I said this, and Dr. Jean said this when we did the finger play thing. It's all about what you bring to it in the interaction that you have with the child during that reading time. So it's all about what you make of it. So what they say is that there is no difference if you're going to bring it and you're going to sell it and you're going to interact with the kids and you're going to use your tone and your voice and you're going to be animated and you're going to make, different voices for the different characters. You're going to do all that. You're going to do that whether that's a print book or whether that's on a tablet or a phone. So it's all about the interaction and not about the actual delivery method. Now, when it comes to a classroom, though, I don't know. Here I'm contradicting myself, but when it comes to a classroom, I think that kids really need to be able to see the pages. So that's just one aside to that. It's all about how it's used and not about the way it's the device it's delivered on, whether that's paper or a tablet or a device. Okay. Another thing they talked about, parent shaming. They didn't say that. The American Academy of Pediatrics didn't call it parent shaming, but that's what it's called on social media. We're always reading these articles about parent shaming. And what they said was people need to be told what they can do with something and not what they can't do. And that's where I have a problem with all the childcare licensing agencies, because it's never about what you can do. It's always about what you can't. It's no, 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 no. It's what we're told not to do with kids. We're told not to tell kids no, 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 no over and over, but that's exactly what the licensing agencies do in the school districts as well. So parents and teachers need guidelines that tell them what they can do and not what they can't do. And every child is different at a different developmental level as well. Yes. Hey, Jamie. All right, so I do want to briefly mention, I'm just checking my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything. So there's lots of research out there, and I think someone in the comments has been talking about, there's lots of brain research out there, okay? And now you have to always remember that anytime, and I've said this before in other broadcasts, anytime you read something or you receive something, some piece of research or information, you have to look at who actually wrote or prepared that piece of information or wrote that article. So quite often when we're talking about brain research, these are professors and doctors who are specifically focused on brain research. And when we talk about technology, often we're talking about people who are either involved in the field of selling technology or involved in some way, shape, or form in making money. So we have to really think carefully about, where does this research come from? One of my favorite places is the Fred Rogers Institute. We know that that's a good, high quality place to get good information about programs, apps, developmentally appropriate ways that you can use technology with kids, suggestions and advice from the Fred Rogers Institute. And there's a great book I wanted to mention called Teaching in the Digital Age by Brian Perling. It's a fabulous book. It's very easy to read, and it talks about ways that you're probably already using technology and that you don't even know in the classroom with kids from ages 3 to 3rd grade. Very easy ways that you can use technology in the classroom, and very easy to read with pictures and stuff. So good. So the brain development stuff. There's all kinds of research out there that talks about how the brain develops. And so I want to tie that brain research in to what we know about technology use in that productive, in that consumptive, and that communicative piece that we talked about. So when a lot of the brain research is talking about the neurons and how kids develop and all that, a screen can inhibit that. So if you're replacing human interaction of any kind with screen time, you are taking away from the child's development. So just know that. So as a parent at home, if you're speaking less to your child, if you're interacting less with your child, and your child is interacting more with a screen in a passive, consumptive way, then you are hindering their development. Their brain is, and I'm not a brain researcher, so I'm not going to get into all the details of the neurons and all that. That's not my thing, but their brain is not developing. We know all the research is there that talks about how a child's brain develops. And they talk about how the brain of a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old is 2.5 times more active than any adult brain. So their brains grow more in those first 5 years of life than they do the rest of their entire lives. So it's crucial. This is a crucial time period in a child's development. So if they are spending a lot of consumptive time on a device or a screen, whether that's a TV, an iPad, or an iPhone, it can hinder development. And if you ask any early childhood teacher out there, any early childhood teacher who's been teaching for more than a few years, they will tell you that they've seen a decrease in the oral language ability of kids coming into their classrooms. And now, why is oral language important? Oral language is talking, right? Speaking and talking. Why is it so important? It's so critically important because oral language is one of those 4 factors that determines future reading success. So Right now, if we can say that kids are coming to us, and this is across all socioeconomic levels, whether you're reaching, if you're working with affluent families or at-risk families, they all have some form of technology devices now. You can read Ruby Payne's research on why that is. But this cuts across all socioeconomic levels. It used to be the kids at risk. If you look at the Hart and Risley study, it used to be the kids at risk that came to us with lower oral language. And now we're seeing that playing field level out because the affluent kids have even more technology. They're spending more time in front of the screen and coming in with less oral language development. So that's a huge problem right then and there, because we already have all kinds of problems, right? We have an achievement gap, and we have all kinds of things going on. So this brain development is crucial. The early years are crucial. We don't want to take away from any of their brain development by putting them in front of the screen too much, because the less they talk and the less they interact with humans, the less their little brains are going to develop. That's just a fact. That's what the research says. So I'm the kind of person who likes to tie research into reality and best practices. So that's kind of what I'm doing, kind of meshing the two here. What else do they say? Relationships affect wiring. So what do we know? Think about what we know. We know that, remember all those horrible stories we saw in the 90s about Russian orphanages, and how kids coming out of Russian orphanages had all these problems, these detachment problems, because they had no human interaction. You remember that 2020 special with Barbara Walters where the kids were in the crib and they'd never been touched by another human, and they just rocked back and forth? That very same thing can happen to a child when they're not interacting with an adult, whether they're in a Russian orphanage or they're in your loving home with 5 iPads. That same thing can happen. I mean, maybe not to that extent, but it's very scary. So those children in those Russian orphanages hadn't had any kind of interaction. They hadn't had any kind of relationship. They hadn't had any opportunities. Thanks, Anne. So it's crucial that kids are still connecting with humans, and hopefully their caregivers, and they're still having a give and take. Yes, Mary Ellen, it's always, in my opinion, technology is always about enhancing your high quality instruction to go deeper into learning and never to replace anything. So language, kids have to be speaking. They have to be developing these oral language skills. And the best way to do that is to interact with adults and their peers. Kids having conversations with other kids. And that's where technology can be dangerous. Remember, I'm playing devil's advocate here. When you have kids, so think about Pokemon Go. Now, I know it does encourage people to get outside, but there was a live video of Times Square recently that was absolutely chilling. Like, I thought it was the zombie apocalypse. Seriously. I was like, why is this not on CNN right now? The entire Times Square, or maybe it was Madison, I don't know where it was, but it was somewhere in New York City, was filled with people. Have you seen this? Filled with people. Filled, like wall-to-wall people. And they were all staring at their phones like this. And I was like, this is the zombie apocalypse. Well, apparently it was some kind of Pokemon Go stop. And so they were all trying to catch these pokey things. I obviously don't play the game, so I don't know. And they weren't talking to each other. So sometimes we see kids and they're outside, playing, and that's great. But sometimes there's kids together and they're all staring at their phone, kind of like at the dinner table. We see people at restaurants where they're all staring at their phone, even their little kids on the device. Those are not good uses of technology. Those are those consumptive uses we talked about. Those are the dangerous uses. Whenever you take a device and you replace it with human, you take human interaction away and you replace that human interaction with a device, that's dangerous. That's detrimental. So technology can be good and technology can be bad. And if you're just joining us, don't forget that you can come back and watch this broadcast from the beginning so that you're not just getting part of the story here. So what else does brain research say? Touch, movement, and gestures are critical to learning. Kids, here's a good one. Most kids pick up on cues, body language, right? Facial expressions. But when they are not interacting with other people very often and they're interacting more with the screen, they don't pick up on that. And what do you know about people in the workplace? Have you ever worked with somebody who wasn't able to pick up on these cues, these body language and facial expressions? It's hard. It's really, really hard. And they're not going to be successful in the workplace if they don't have these skills. And these skills develop at a very young age. It's not like, okay, they're 5 and if they got this problem, it'll go away. This is crucial. Like, this is crucial. So, thank you. No, Jacqueline, consumptive use is just staring at a screen. And then there's interactive use where they're producing something. So the particular program you're talking about, I can't comment specifically on. I am aware of it, but I can't comment on it specifically. But I would look at whether the child is producing something. And when I'm talking about producing something, I'm talking about creating like a video or something that they're using their higher level thinking skills to create. I'm just thinking of these sock puppet videos that I've created with kids. They're so super fun. Sorry, my phone is giving me messages again. So switching to workbooks, in my opinion, wouldn't be any better or any different. They're pretty much the same. Let me just check here. So another thing the research talks about is these windows of opportunity. As children develop, there's these crucial windows where things are happening in their brain. All these neurons are connecting and all these things are happening up here where all the connections are made. The stuff that is going to be with them for the rest of their life. And these connections, if they're not made at these crucial times, they create problems. So we have to be really, really, really careful when it comes to technology. So technology is great. It's a great tool. Support and enhance instruction, high quality instruction, go deeper in learning. But at the same time, we have to be very mindful of the way that it's used. So it's always, one of the things the research shows is that it's best to be using, if you're going to be using any kind of technology, with the children. So if you're using technology as a center, where they're going there and they're sitting and they're tapping away on the screen or whatever, that's pretty much consumptive use. So that's not the best use of their time. So if you're using it with them, and you're using it to create something. So maybe you're in a small group and you're creating this video or you're creating something, you're working with them. And so the same is true for parents at home. So anytime your child is sitting in front of a device and you're not there interacting with them, then that's a consumptive use. So they're not engaged in producing something, right? Absolutely, Anne, of course. Absolutely. I so agree. All kids need hands-on, interactive, inquiry-based activities to stimulate brain development. They all do. So I am all for that. I totally agree. Technology is a tool. It's not teaching. It never should replace teaching. So a lot of parents say this, a lot of teachers say this too. My kids know so much more than I ever could have imagined, all because of certain apps or technology or whatever. Like, they wouldn't know all their ABCs by the time they were 3 if they didn't have this app. And, you know, the research shows that sure, they can learn it when they're 3, but should they be learning it when they're 3? And what benefits does it have to learn it at 3? You know, and what is the retention of that? You know, so there's all these questions about it. Just because they can learn it doesn't mean they should be. Is it the best use of their time? What about their fine motor skills? So they have those skills in their hands that they need to eventually grasp a pencil. So you have to think about all these things. This is, like I said, this is a really hot topic, right, guys? Would you agree? Let me know in the comments what you think about this hot topic, whether you heart it, you love it, you like it, whatever. Make sure that you share it with your friends. Yes, so that is kind of my summary of playing devil's advocate. So I'm all about technology and embracing technology, and go back to the beginning if you're just joining us and listen to my points about technology and the importance of technology. And how we need to embrace it because it's not going away, but we also need to learn how to use it appropriately. So when we're in the classroom, if you're in the classroom with kids, it has to be used appropriately to support and enhance learning. It has to be a productive or communicative use. Think about Skyping with other classrooms. One of the things we did, I think, in my classroom was we made a video for the principal, and he just thought that was so cool. So anyway, our thinking needs to evolve because technology evolves every single day. So here's my bottom line. There is no right or wrong. There is no bad or good. Technology isn't evil. It's not going to end the world, although Pokemon Go might. I don't know. The jury's still out on that. But it has to be in moderation. Just like we eat candy in moderation, we have to use technology in moderation. We have to be very careful. We have to be very planful and purposeful in the way that we use these things in our classrooms, so they're not just a center for the kids to go to occupy their time. They should be creating something. They should be interacting with an adult while they are using it. So it's never a babysitter. So it's never going to replace the interaction. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I hope I wasn't just talking to myself tonight for 45 minutes. So I want to thank you all for stopping by tonight to talk about this very hot topic with us. Screen time, how much, when, and is it hurting or helping our kids? I hope you got some good information that you can take back and use either at home or in your classroom, because this is good for everybody, good information for everybody. And I will be letting you know, if you want to sign up for my free email updates, I will be letting you know, we're having some connectivity issues again. I will be letting you know about my next live webinar. So these are Facebook Live broadcasts. They're kind of informal. They're kind of chatty. It's just me and you talking like we're at Starbucks. But my webinars, you get 1 hour of credit. And the next one is coming up in September. It's called Ready, Set, Read. What comes first. And so we're going to be talking about how to set the foundation for reading really successfully at pre-K and kindergarten level. That's great, Alice. Technology is a required center. Absolutely. In some places it is. And that's fine, as long as we're mindful of the way that we use that. So sign up for my free email updates, and we will be letting you know as soon as registration opens for that next live public webinar. Oh yes, using the camera on any device with your kids is a great use of technology. They talk about that. Brian Perling talks about that in his book, Teaching in the Digital Age. All right, so before we go, I want to thank all the Teaching Tribe members who came tonight to join us, as well as all of you out there around the world. The Teaching Tribe is my membership site for teachers just like you, teachers of Head Start, preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, homeschool. We've got librarians. We've got teachers from international schools around the world, more than 360 members. And you can get access to all of the printables at pre-K pages at your fingertips 24/7, 2 webinars a month with a certificate of attendance for each one, and a supportive community, a safe haven for asking and answering questions, as well as our book study. So thank you so very much for joining us tonight. This is a regularly scheduled broadcast every Monday and Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm Vanessa Levin from Pre-K Pages. Thanks a lot for tuning in tonight, and I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.